Welcome to the second webinar in the Business Agility Agile Leadership series of 5. This is the one I ran on the 6th of May, and the title of this one is What is Agile Leadership? Hope you enjoy it. Brilliant. There we go. Yeah. Fantastico. So I'm seeing loads of people now all saying hi. So hi to you too. Brilliant stuff. Okay. So you've obviously got the settings set right as well. Okay, let's move forward. So a bit of background on me. Not planning to spend a huge amount of time on this, but I was the chairman and founder. Well, I am the chairman and founder now of Radtac. Radtac was formed in '98 by myself and a few other people. So we've been around for a fair while now. 20, whatever that is, years, 22 years. Radtac's a multi-million-pound company that's based internationally. So yeah, very successful. I started in the IT industry in '83. Over the recent years, I've been really working as a worldwide specialist in Agile, Lean, Kanban, that sort of stuff. Certified in all sorts of stuff. I won't bore you with that, but certified in all sorts of different Agile and non-Agile approaches. Ex-director of Dynamic System Development Consortium. That is basically what has morphed into the Agile Business Consortium. Just looking at chat again. Hi to everybody. Everybody else who's now turning up. Lead author, editor of the Agile Foundations book. That's the thing you can see on this slide here. Basically, the definition of Agile for the British Computer Society. Fellow of the Agile Business Consortium, and ex-adjunct professor of Agile Project Management at Hull University. So that's just a bit of background on myself. So I've been working in Agile for quite a while, since before it was known as Agile, actually. I've been working in Agile since '94. So today, what we're planning to have a look at is really this. So the history of Agile. I always say standing on the shoulders of giants. There's a lot of concepts in Agile that are based on great solid stuff that's been there for quite a while. 5 Agile-based patterns. As I see them. It'll be interesting to get some discussion on that. 7 foundations of lean thinking. That's pretty standard stuff defined in the '70s. The Agile leadership mindset. So what does that mean? So I've got some ideas here about different schools of thought on leadership, how that tracks into Agile. 10 ways to recognize the strategy and structure of an Agile business from a leadership perspective. So again, this is stuff that I've come up with. I'll be interested in your comments, see what you think of that. A little bit, 1 or 2 slides on leading high-performing teams. We'll deal with that in more detail in this series of 5 webinars later on, but we'll have a quick look at it today. And then I've got an organizational agility self-assessment, which if we get time, we'll have a look at, or alternatively, I am recording this webinar and I'll give you access to the whole webinar, the whole hour. So you'll be able to use the organizational agility self-assessment a bit later on. The later webinars, forms of power and influence next Wednesday, self-development as an Agile leader the Wednesday following that, and then strategic thinking for Agile leaders the Wednesday following that. So without further ado, let's start driving forward. So why business agility? I spent more time in the previous webinar looking at this, really ran a few videos, etc. But suffice to say, nowadays it's a VUCA world. So VUCA, it's volatile, it's uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So in essence, in the world as it is today, more traditional tailoristic approaches like waterfall, for example, where you're going to do big upfront analysis and big upfront design, don't really work in today's world. Today's world is much more uncertain. It's much more volatile. Things change faster. So probably no great surprise, Agile is designed for this world. So if your business is in either a complicated, complex, or even anarchic environment where things are changing a lot, the market's changing a lot, and you need to align to that changing market, really that's where we should be using agility. Not planning to talk about that anymore. Talked about that a lot more on the previous webinar, so I don't want to just go through the same thing again and again. I'm sure we all recognize this. It wasn't so long ago that certainly I was interacting with people in businesses who were saying, well, we're not sure Agile's for us. We're not sure we need to go digital at the moment. Well, the black swan, as they're known, of COVID-19 has come in and changed that almost overnight. Everything's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous now. So yes, interesting times we're living in. Isn't there an ancient Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times? Well, we're certainly living in interesting times. So history and base patterns. Oh, fantastic. We've got a guy called Craig. Hi, how you doing, Craig? Also a founding member of the BC Agile Specialist Group. Yes, indeedy, which Craig was in. Good to see you, Craig. So I was just looking at the chat there. So history and base patterns. Yeah, so back in 48, Michael Ono, in essence, came up with what's known nowadays as the Toyota production system. Tom Gill, who some of you might be aware of, pretty famous UK-based guru. He developed a broadly agile approach called EVO back in 85. Barry Boehm, some of you might have heard of. You might have heard of him in the context of Boehm's Cone of Uncertainty. He came up with something called Spiral in the mid 80s. So these are also early versions of what we now call Agile. Rapid Application Development, and indeed Radtac, the company I work with, is the reason it's called Radtac is we were doing Agile before it was called Agile. So Agile sort of got named in 2001 on the Agile Manifesto. Prior to that, these frameworks were known as RAD frameworks. So the reason Radtac is called Radtac is Rapid Application Development, Training and Consultancy. Crystal, very early family of agile approaches. DSJM I mentioned very quickly, which was very big in the UK, reasonably big in India, etc. I think it would be fair to say it's less big nowadays, but it used to be big in the 90s. Ken and Jeff presented a paper on Scrum, which has sort of like become the, I suppose, the standard along with Kanban for team-based working. Back in 95, yeah, we can see the things we've got on the slide here. So Radtac formed in 98. Kent Beck, Extreme Programming, fantastic stuff. XP Explained is the book to read from Kent Beck. Agile Manifesto 2001, Lean Software Development, Mary and Tom. Yeah, we can see lots of stuff here. David J, Kanban, sort of like Kanban is a concept from Lean originally, but sort of David's evolved it into more of a, well, he calls it a transformation approach. And I agree, it is a transformation approach, but it's got some good Lean thinking in there as well. Yeah, 2011, that's really, although I've been working in Agile since 94, 2011, yeah, it was really when the scaling framework started to take off. Obviously, people like myself, like Craig, have been working in scaling for a long time prior to that, helping organizations scale to Agile. But this is when really the scaling frameworks came about, Safe, Less, Nexus, Scrum at Scale. There's loads of scaling frameworks. So that's when they really started taking off. As of today, Safe is the largest, the scaled Agile framework. Less, large-scale Scrum, I would say, is probably the second largest. All of these scaling frameworks have positives, negatives. It's a case of horses for courses and pick what works for you. BCS launched its range of BCS Agile certifications, back in 2012. 2016, I would see as really the dawn of the age of business agility. Although saying that, again, a number of us have been helping businesses go agile for a long time, but it really came onto the agenda in 2016 in a big way, and it's really coming onto the agenda in a huge way at the moment. Sadly, COVID-19 has sort of identified to a lot of businesses they must be agile to survive in today's world. They must be using agile thinking. Recent things that happened. PMI has bought, Project Management Institute has bought Disciplined Agile, one of the scaling frameworks, so it'll be easy to see how that interesting to see how that morphs. Virtual interaction has come of age, 2020, with COVID, etc. A lot of business is now being done virtually, so interesting. So yeah, standing on the shoulder of giants, a brief history of Agile there. Agile is based on very, very solid foundations. It's unique in itself, but it's based on solid foundations. Now, I'm going to have a very, very quick look at the Agile values, and the Agile principles from the Agile Manifesto. I'm certainly not planning to spend a lot of time on this because we could spend sort of 5 hours just on this. I just want to make a point. For those of you who are not aware of the Agile Manifesto, it really defines the heart of what agility is. You can see down the bottom left of this slide, www.agilemanifesto.org. So I'd highly recommend you have a look at this, or alternatively, pop me an email and I'll run you through some stuff on the Agile Manifesto. And really the point I wanted to make is when this manifesto was originally written, it was originally written as the Agile Manifesto for software development. It's morphed since then into really, the Agile Manifesto for everything. Agile is used a lot in marketing, it's used a lot in HR, it's used a lot in businesses nowadays, as I was suggesting. You'll see when you look at the Agile Manifesto, one of the values, for example, working software over comprehensive documentation. I think more accurately nowadays, that would be working outcomes over comprehensive documentation. So, a definition of Agile. Well, one that sort of works for me, a definition of Agile that works for me, it's about continuous deployment of value on a fit-for-purpose basis. Continuous delivery of value on a fit-for-purpose basis. So we're always trying to get value into the business and the market quickly. One of the major reasons for that is that we want fast feedback cycles. So if we're working in a VUCA world where things are changing all the time, we've got to get fast feedback cycles to enable us to stay in line with that changing market. So if we've produced small increments of value, that allows us to iterate the outcomes that we're producing. So yeah, it's really more about outcomes. Not planning to go through these as I was suggesting. I can take any of you through these offline if you wish, or just have a look at the Agile Manifesto. Yeah, so just making the point here as well. Originally, the manifesto was the Agile Manifesto for software development. Nowadays, whenever really you see the term software in there, you could replace that with outcomes. Deliver working outcomes frequently. Yeah, so we can see there on number 4, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project or product evolution. There's no specific mandate within Agile to use projects, for example. You know, we can evolve, continuously evolve products or outcomes. We might do that in a project style, or we might not. So yeah, there's a bit of evolution there. So values, principles of Agile. If we could go on to chat. So as I say, rather than me going through these, I'll leave this up here. Which of the values and principles do you find hardest to implement as a leader, and why? If you could raise some points on chat, please, that would be absolutely awesome. And we'll have a look at what you come up with. As I say, I'll just go back to here so you can actually see what the principles are. So I'm going to go off and just look at chat now to see what everybody comes up with. Hopefully, lots of stuff. And it also gives me a chance to have a drink. Collaboration, yes. In organizations that have been very used to staged delivery, in other words, you know, the analysts pass something to designers, etc., or whatever, then yes, it can be very difficult to get people to collaborate, because in some organizations, they see collaboration as a risk. Yes. Scaling, certainly, as I say, the age of scaling, sort of 2011, 12. Breaking silos, organizational silos is a real biggie. Yeah. Simplicity, yes, directly relating to one of the principles there. Absolutely true. Alignment with business value, so thinking about systems thinking and value change. Lack of leadership support. Oh, hi, Zach. Good to see you back. Zach's back with us. Brilliant. Craig, number 6 may be a challenge now. So the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to the development team is face-to-face. Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting one, actually, that Craig's raised there, number 6, because my view on this one, face-to-face communication, has always been, hey, physical proximity and physical face-to-face collaboration is always the best. It's been measured by, lots and lots of studies. However, where we can't do physical co-location, and I and Radtac have certainly worked with many organizations who are global, a pretty close second is virtual collaboration, i.e. what we're doing at the moment. So physical collaboration, empirically the data shows that's the best thing to do. However, virtual co-location will sort of get us up that scale as well. So measuring success is a biggie. Yes, we'll talk about that in a later webinar. There's lots of different ideas about how we can measure success. Aligning with senior leadership. My personal experience on senior leadership is when we're doing something like trying to transform to an agile way of working, or anything really, senior leadership, you can talk until you're blue in the face about theory. We really need to show some hard evidence, so it tracks back there to that measurement, making sure that we've got things we can show them to get their buy-in and continue to have their buy-in. Certainly when I was a CEO, because I used to be the CEO of Radtac, I'm now, as I say, I'm now chairman and founder, but when I was the CEO of Radtac, people could come along and talk to me about theory as much as they want, and obviously I'd listen to them and I'd find it very interesting, but it's only really once that theory is being applied and I've got some empirical evidence that it works, that's when I'll put some clout behind it, some real clout behind it. So yes, so you've got some fantastic ones here, really good. Let's just go back to the old slides if we may. So you've raised some brilliant points there. So yeah, top challenges. Yeah, so 5 business agility based patterns, maybe. As I say, this is an evolving feast. One of the things when we get to the end of the webinars I'm going to ask you is, I'm going to form a community of practice around this sort of thinking. to see who's interested in contributing. I know we've got some really good thinkers here. Zach, for example, has come up with some interesting ideas. Craig's been working in Agile for years and years and years. And so yes, so basically to evolve this stuff. But what I'm thinking at the moment is these are sort of 5 business agility based patterns maybe. So we always adapt. We always experiment for improvement. So we're always sort of doing experiments and pivots, and then we do another experiment and pivot, another experiment and pivot. A very, very good book, if you want to look at this in more detail, is a book called Lean Startup by a guy called Eric Ries, R-E-I-S-S. And Eric's talking there about in a VUCA world, we need to be agile, and that means doing small increments of value. In other words, running experiments, and then based on the factual evidence, the empirical evidence coming back, we're going to pivot. So limit WIP, or limit work in progress. This is something from Kanban thinking. Kanban, well, I was about to say Kanban's an agile approach. It's not really, but for the sake of today, let's deal with that. Kanban's an agile approach. Limiting work in progress is one of the ways we optimize flow. And what we're looking for always when we're thinking about agility is keeping things simple and optimizing the flow of value. So we get the flow of value out in the most effective way we can. Embrace collective responsibility, definitely. We want feature teams that are focused on value chains, teams that are focused on what the business wants, and collectively we're all responsible for producing fantastic outcomes. So there's a huge amount of credence on that in Agile. Solve problems systematically. So systems thinking we'll talk a little bit about as we go forward. Peter Senge, etc. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Yes. So solve problems systematically. That also brings us back to something we talked a little bit about last week. Stop starting and start finishing. What we don't want is the situation where we get loads of things all started up at the same time, because that's going to cause a huge amount of noise and a huge amount of context and task switching. What we do want is thinking about the overall business systems and start things up and then finish them, then start the next thing. Yes, James, customer. We'll certainly be looking at customer centricity. Interestingly, I was running a certified Scrum product owner course the last 2 days, and we spent a lot of time looking at customer centricity. Absolutely fundamentally important for Agile. Optimal batch size, definitely, from Karthik there. Yeah, great point you're making there, Karthik. In tandem to limiting work in progress, we need to optimize the batch size. So it's another bit of Kanban thinking. And then measure economic progress, value. So very much making sure that we're focusing on the customer, we're focusing on the market, all that sort of good stuff. So 5 agile base patterns there. You've made some great suggestions on chat. As I say, this will evolve over time. This is just really, putting some suggestions out there, see what people think. These are a bit more sort of set in stone, the 7 guiding principles of lean. So just have a look at these. Mary and Tom Poppedick. If you want to learn about lean from the perspective or the slant of software engineering, great book, Lean Software Development by Mary and Tom Poppedick. So this is a quote from Mary. Organizations that are truly lean have a strong competitive advantage because they respond very rapidly and in a highly disciplined manner to market demand rather than trying to predict the future. So agile thinking, we're very much small increments, iterate based on the finding of those small increments. So think big, act small, fail fast, and learn rapidly. So just have a very quick look through these. Eliminate waste. There's lots of wastes, waiting time, for example, queues, for example. So there's lots of things that can cause waste within our business. We're always ruthlessly, to be fair, looking at how we can eliminate waste within the business. Build quality in. Some of you in the Agile world may be aware of something called extreme programming. The term extreme programming to me suggests sort of speed, making sure we do things that are really fast. Now, actually, extreme programming is all about quality. It's all about the aim of extreme programming is to get defect-free code. So it's about extreme quality. And interestingly, even though the name is extreme programming, it's very, very applicable to business. So in other words, you can use a lot of the practices in XP to run your business, to help your business. So again, we'll look at that as we evolve in future webinars. Create knowledge. Yes, we certainly want knowledge workers within an agile sphere. We're creating knowledge. We'll look at some of Peter Drucker's thinking on knowledge workers a little bit later on in this webinar. Defer commitment. A key aim that we have in agile systems is what's called making decisions at the last responsible moment. What that means is basically we're going to make decisions, obviously, but we don't want to guess on all the decisions right at the beginning. What we want to do is we want to start developing outcomes, and we want to start getting feedback from the stakeholders, the market, and we'll only make decisions at the last point we have to. That gives us two major benefits. One major benefit is it allows us to be agile. It allows us to interact with that VUCA world, because if we make all the decisions too early, we're tying ourselves into a situation we can't get out of. That's one reason. The other reason relates to another key thing within Agile, and it's to do with having empirical evidence. So we work empirically in Agile. We make decisions based on factual evidence. If we defer the commitment, it means that we've got more information, more data to help us make a good decision. If we try and make all the decisions up front, then we haven't really got any empirical hard facts to make decisions on. So defer commitment. Deliver fast. I would actually personally evolve that a bit and say deliver that at the frequency that makes sense for the business or makes sense for the market. In other words, there's no point producing 5 outcomes a week if the market wants 5,000, and there's no point producing 5,000 outcomes a week if the market wants 5. So, for me, it's not really deliver fast per se. It's deliver continuously, taking into account, the cadence of the market. Respect people and trust. Yeah, excuse me. Absolutely fundamental if we want to get effective teams. And then optimize the whole. So thinking about systems thinking there again, don't look at a part of the system, look at the whole system and then optimize the whole system. Yeah. So, okay, systems thinking, yes, we're going to have a quick look at that. I can see a comment here from Shalene, fantastic stuff. Interesting, using the word optimize is not lean. Lean's about endlessly continually improving. I agree. I would suggest it's about endlessly optimizing. I totally agree with what you're saying, though. It's about continuous improvement. So is Agile, really. It's about continuous improvement as we go forward. Sustainable delivery from Karthik. Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the principles of practices in extreme programming: sustainable pace, making sure we're not burning out all our people. And then Craig suggested to us, deliver the right thing, i.e., value, fast. Yeah, brilliant. Proximity of value. Yeah, understanding where the value sits and how the customer sees value. Great comments you're making on chats here, folks. Thank you very much. Brilliant stuff. Okay, let's move forward from there a bit. So I've got some ideas here, schools of thought about leadership. I'm not saying any of these are specifically right or wrong, but I think most of the things I put here sort of like align into the schools of thought: agility thinking, agility leadership. So before we get there again, if you'd be kind enough to raise some more stuff on chat. So what leadership schools of thought do you rate or believe in? Again, if you could just raise some points on the chat, that would be absolutely awesome. And if you raise those points for everybody, then obviously everybody's going to see what you're commenting, which would be brilliant. So Craig again, brilliant. Yeah, interest in lean organizations embrace just in time. Yes, it does run into issues when the system becomes more complex, certainly. Comment from Frank here, leadership. Yeah, absolutely. Servant leadership we'll have a look at a little bit later on, definitely. Agile from a B, yeah. Zach, serve to lead is the motto of Sandhurst, enough said. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually when you look at the military. Some people would look at the military and think, oh my God, they are the least agile organization in the world. The interesting thing is they're actually very agile. They tend to be non-agile when they're in barracks, etc. However, if you go into a theatre of war, you don't have any choice. You have to be agile. So yeah, interesting one there from Zach. Lean's not about reducing weight, it's about creating flow. Well, certainly it's about creating flow, but one of the core principles of lean is eliminate waste. So I'm suggesting it is about reducing waste. Lewis, be a leader that can be followed even when you're not there. Superb. So what we need to do as a leader is, we're not leading isn't about saying do this, do that, do this, do that. Leading is about getting people to understand why we have this behavior mode. If people understand why this behavior mode is in place, then we've got half a chance that they'll actually do it when we're not there. And one of the in Scrum, for example, when we look at the daily scrums, the only people who absolutely have to be there is the development team. So in other words, the Scrum Master, the Agile leader, arguably, doesn't need to be there. So yeah, good point there. Fantastic. Yes, I agree, which also includes eliminating waste, but it is focused on flow. Yeah. Yeah, Clive, military is indeed agile, flexibility in executing the plan. I'll get this quote wrong because I always do. I think it's from Eisenhower, wasn't it? Something like planning is essential, but plans are useless, or something like that. So, he's making the point there that by going through the process of planning, it gives us huge value. But, Eisenhower, as soon as you go into a theatre of war, forget it. Everything's going to change. You don't get a much more VUCA environment. Yeah, indeed. The OODA loop from Major Maddox and Colonel John Boyd. So OODA is, observe, orient, decide, act, basically designed for jet pilots. Again, a very VUCA world. Yeah, you're raising some brilliant stuff. So yeah, we sort of like simpatico, I think, in the sort of stuff you're raising and the sort of stuff I was thinking of bringing up. So, point number one, different schools of thought. Leadership is not the same as management, definitely. That's definitely my experience. If you're working in a continuous improvement organization, then certainly, I would value transformational leadership over transactional management. Now, do we need transactional management as well? Yes. There's a really interesting video which I'll show definitely not today, but in a later webinar from Professor John Cotter, where he talks about, the organization typically, when it's entrepreneurial, it starts in a very, very agile way. And then over time, it moves into more sort of like management structures. And he makes the point that organizations that are purely made of management structures cannot be innovative and creative and won't survive in today's world. So he then talks about, ways to think about having an innovative, creative culture, but also the economies of scale. So it's an interesting video. If we get time, I may show this in a later webinar. So yeah, good leaders make a difference, successful outcome. Yeah, absolutely. Good leaders always in control. No, I would say definitely not. Something I've learned as a CEO is basically, focus on employing brilliant people, agree with those brilliant people what the direction of travel is, and then as a leader, do whatever the hell you can to enable them to be brilliant. And largely that's about getting out of the bleeding way. So enable them to be brilliant. And, as long as we're all going down the same direction of travel, then that's fantastic. Eliminate leaders completely. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, self-organizing systems. Self-organizing systems don't have leaders. So yeah, it's an interesting concept. Leaders should adapt their style to the situation you're in. Situational-based leadership. Definitely. We'll have a look at this in later webinars. Roles are not important in self-organizing teams. Yeah, that's certainly what we aim for. We want the team to self-organize. So we don't want a manager of the team. What we tend to end up with is a number of servant leaders, and we'll talk about servant leadership a little bit later on. So a few schools of thought there. Another school of thought here. I'm sure some of you will have heard of Patty McCord. She either is or was, I can't remember, to be honest, the HR director at Netflix. Very, very successful company, especially now. So yeah, Patty's got some great. She's got some great videos on YouTube, etc. If you have a chance to have a look. But I like this quote: "A business leader's job is to create great teams that do amazing work on time. That's it." That's my experience. That's certainly the ethos that we've tried to create in our company. Yeah. So there's a book there from Patty, powerful. Yep. Pretty good. Definitely, I would suggest have a look at the. YouTube clips. So another school of thought, Drucker. I'm sure we've all heard of Drucker. Peter Drucker, very, very famous, very famous chap. Yeah, well, so a good one here from Brian. Empowerment needs to come with commitment and accountability within the team. Definitely. The flip side of empowerment is commitment and accountability. Empowerment doesn't mean everybody's got the power to do everything, and empowerment also doesn't mean, oh, right, we can just do what the hell we want now and there's no accountability. Accountability is the flip side of empowerment. So yes, I definitely agree with that, Brian. Great comments. Thanks very much. Drucker, yeah. So the point Drucker, or one of the points Drucker makes, workers are knowledge workers. If they know more about the work, they perform than their bosses. Of the however many people it is in Radtac nowadays, full-time employees, I don't know, 50, 60, whatever it is. Yeah, I think something that's fair to say is the vast majority of them, if I could say it, know more than me. They're all knowledge workers, especially in their specialist areas. So, the point Drucker's making here is that if we do have knowledge workers, and lots of organizations do work this way, they're really the best place to make decisions about how to do things. So yeah, definitely. So again, agile leadership. We want the team to define how to do stuff. What we're going to do is coach and facilitate them to help them continually improve. So the point that Cecil was making, continual improvement. Yeah. To effectively lead, the workers must be heard and respected. Definitely. Yes, we'll look at Steve Jobs, a video from Steve Jobs in the not too distant, where he talks about this, this sort of thing. I think it's a pretty good video. Yeah, a great comment here from Karthik as well. Autonomy leads to empowerment. Definitely. I would recommend. I'm sure you've heard of this book and this video, Karthik. The book is called Drive. It's by a guy called Dan Pink. And if you have a look on YouTube at a video that he does called Autonomy, Mastery, Purpose, excellent stuff. Is it new? To be honest, no. But is the idea new? But the way he puts it across and the science he's basing, he's basing on, it's really good. Yeah, Karthik, I'll definitely recommend that one. Absolutely. That's interesting. I didn't know that, Cease. That's a great point. Not utilising workers' knowledge is being categorised as the 8th waste. Oh, brilliant. Didn't know that. Thanks very much. Brilliant. Great stuff. Okay, so yeah, Drucker. Again, another school of thought around leadership. Yeah, I like this one. This is a goodie. So a leader is like a shepherd. He stays behind the flock, letting the most nimble go out ahead, whereupon the others follow, not really realizing that all along they're being directed from behind. Yeah, anything from Nelson Mandela's probably certainly worth listening to. So yeah, again, another leadership school of thought that I'd sort of think is aligned to Agile, certainly aligned with my thinking. Interesting one here from you as an entrepreneur, who sort of like started a business from nothing to something of reasonable size, etc., etc. Yeah, a winner is a dreamer who never gives up. I'm not sure I'd call myself a winner, but I would call myself an entrepreneur who's sort of done okay. Yeah, certainly my experience of running a business is you'd never give up. It will go up, it will go down, it will go up, it will go down. It's just the nature of the VUCA world. The difference between people, whatever the right word is, people who are successful or not, whatever the right word is basically they don't give up. So yeah, this point from Mandela here, I think is a real good one. So leadership school of thought again. Servant leaders, I said we'd have a look at this. As I say, this is a webinar, so we haven't got time to look into any of these ideas in a huge amount of detail. But another idea, servant leadership, Robert Greenleaf. So yeah, good quote from Greenleaf there. My experience is that within teams, what tends to happen within an organization is you tend to get communities of practice. And in the perfect world, self-organizing communities of practice. So if you were looking at the information technology world, for example, you would typically have, a coding community of practice, a testing community of practice, a user experience and user interface community of practice, so different communities of practice, a Scrum Master community of practice, a product owner community of practice, etc., these sorts of things. Now, what tends to happen is a team will self-organize and they will ask somebody from the team to go along to these communities of practice. So this person goes along to the testing community of practice, etc., yeah. What then happens is that person who's gone to that community of practice serves in the ideas from our team to that community of practice, and then also comes back from the community of practice and serves back the best practice into our team. So in essence, they become a servant leader for that area. Yeah. So servant leadership is absolutely fundamental to everything in the team. I mean, certainly the Scrum Master, the person who's there to coach and facilitate the team and continually improve the team in Scrum, very much a servant leader. Yeah. So if you aren't aware of servant leadership, I would highly recommend it. Have a look. And the dude to read is, the dude to start with is Robert Greenleaf. Yeah, this is something that took me a while to learn, sort of 35 years ago. This is from Managing for Excellence from David Bradford and Alan Cohen. They didn't come up with the idea, but they evolved it, and I like this diagram. So it's called the leadership trap, or the leadership. I must admit, I can't remember the actual correct term for it, but hopefully it'll be apparent as we go through it. So where we start from, the leader feels over-responsible for coordination, feels over-responsible for answers, feels over-responsible for overall unit goals. So therefore, because they feel over-responsible for coordination, their direct reports feel over-controlled because they're trying to coordinate everything, command and control everything. Because they feel over-responsible for answers, the direct reports feel blocked and underused. They've been treated as automatons rather than intelligent, brilliant people. And because they feel over-responsible for over-unit goals, the direct reports feel committed only to their own sub-goals. So we've not got anybody using systems thinking and working together as on the whole value chain. So basically the direct reports feel lower commitment and sense of responsibility. So that then feeds back to the leader. The direct reports feel lower commitment and sense of responsibility, goes back to the direct leader, goes back to the leader, sorry, and then the leader feels even more over responsible. So they put more command and control on. So people then decommit more, feeds back to the leader. So the leader puts more command, and it becomes a self-sustaining cycle. So, you know, as a leader, certainly as an agile leader, we need to break out of this. It's called the leadership myth. That's it, the leadership myth. So we need to break out of this leadership myth. A quick question from Will there. Can we get some of these slides at the end? Yes, I'm actually recording this. I'll send out the whole recording to everybody who's on the webinar, and I'll also put it on LinkedIn and all that sort of good stuff. So yes, you'll have access to all this information afterwards. Brilliant stuff. So another thought process there. Another thought process here, a leadership thought. Pleasure, Karthik. Another leadership another leadership thought process here. I mentioned this very quickly last week. It's a concept from somebody called McGregor in a book, The Human Side of Enterprise. Again, it's good, solid stuff. It's been around for a while, this. Theory X and Theory Y. The point this is making is the people who are working within a team will largely work within the ethos and behavior mode of the leader who's facilitating and coaching the team. So in other words, if the leader thinks that, you know, the team's attitude is everybody dislikes work, we must be forced to go in the right direction, we'd rather be directed than accept responsibility, etc., etc. We're only motivated by money, you know, this sort of thing, which is, you know, Dan Pink makes a good, compelling argument that that's not the case. We're not only motivated by money. Yeah, if that's the way the leader's thinking, that's the way the team will react. Yes, that's the way the team will act. And then we get back to the leadership myth. Theory Y is much more of a facilitative coaching leader. So, you know, we think about the team that they're brilliant, they want to do a great job. They can direct themselves. And in fact, as knowledge workers, as Drucker suggests, they're the only people who can direct themselves effectively. We're motivated by the desire to fill our potential. So the leader's there to help the team fulfill their potential. People generally want to be creative. They want to be innovative. So we enable the environment for them to be creative and innovative. So again, if we've got a Theory Y manager setting up that sort of environment, that's the way the team will interact. So this is the point McGregor's making. You know, he's suggesting that we should really be Theory Y managers because that's going to enable the team. Something from Craig here, perhaps there should also be an additional way of not working on the most important work due to failed prioritization. Makes sense to me. We'll talk about prioritization a little bit later. And one here from Zach, does the leader need to be able to do the tasks the team does? No. Certainly, you know, in my career, it's, you know, I've worked coaching organizations on agile, you know, how to use agile working practices, how to use lean working practices, when I'm certainly not an expert in their area. For, you know, one quick example I can think of from a business agility perspective, this was about 15 years ago. I was helping health commissioners in 4 primary care trusts, Southampton, Hampshire, Isle of Wight and Portsmouth. And as I say, what we were doing there is we were trying to use agile thinking to speed up the commissioning process. It generally took them 2 years to commission dementia services, for example. We got that down to 3 months using agile thinking. So I know nothing about dementia services commissioning or anything like that, but I could certainly help them. Yeah, interesting one there from Zach as well. You're a coach, not a leader. I would suggest that leadership is coaching and facilitation. So I think we agree on that one. It is about coaching and facilitation. It's not about mentoring and training. It's about coaching and facilitation. It's about enabling brilliant teams. Brilliant, yeah. And then this really resonates with me. You know, is there anything new in the world? I don't know. So this comes in from Lao Tzu. Yeah, the wicked leader is he who the people despise. The good leader is he who the people revere. And then a thing I really like is the great leader is he who the people say we did it ourselves. Rock and roll, rock and roll. I mean, if we can get the team self-organizing, being brilliant and continually improving, great. Whether they think it's us who's coaching and facilitating them to do that or not, who cares? You know, brilliant. So I really like that. I really like that idea. Yeah, coaching is a leadership style without command and control. Yeah, I agree. Command and control is sort of like the antithesis, if that's the right word. It's the opposite of agile leadership thinking. You know, we don't want to be command and controlling. we want to enable teams of brilliant people to be brilliant, basically, at the end of the day. So yes, some leadership schools of thought there. Just like to run this video from Steve Jobs, if I may. So I'll just run this. Say it's only about a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
One of the keys to Apple is Apple's an incredibly collaborative company. And so, you know how many committees we have at Apple?
No.
0. We have no committees.
No committees.
We are organized like a startup. One person's in charge of iPhone OS software. One person's in charge of Mac hardware. One person's in charge of iPhone hardware engineering. Another person's in charge of worldwide marketing. Another person's in charge of operations. We're organized like a startup. We're the biggest startup on the planet. And we all meet for 3 hours once a week, and we talk about everything we're doing, the whole business. And there's tremendous teamwork at the top of the company, which filters down to tremendous teamwork throughout the company. And teamwork is dependent on trusting the other folks to come through with their part without watching them all the time, but trusting that they're going to come through with their parts. And that's what we do really well. And we're great at figuring out how to divide things up into these great teams that we have and all work on the same thing, touch bases frequently, and bring it all together into a product. We do that really well. And so what I do all day is meet with teams of people and work on ideas and solve problems to make new products, to make new marketing programs, whatever it is.
And are people willing to tell you you're wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, other than snarky journalists. I mean, people have worked.
Oh, yeah. No, we have wonderful arguments.
And do you win them all? Or?
Oh, no, I wish I did. No, see, you can't. If you want to hire great people and have them stay working for you, you have to let them make a lot of decisions, and you have to be run by ideas, not hierarchy. The best ideas have to win. So otherwise, good people don't stay.
But you must be more than a facilitator who runs meetings. You obviously contribute your own ideas.
I contribute ideas, sure. Well, why would I be there if I didn't?
So interesting. You know, whether you love or hate Jobs, there's a lot of sense, I think, in what he's talking about there. And he's, you know, he's making a point there that we're not going to keep the best people. You know, if we've got people who are innovative, creative, and brilliant, why on earth would they stay in an organisation that treats them like an automaton? So it's really important. So I've got a few ideas here about leadership, how to recognise the agile business leader. Again, this is sort of like a work in progress, and it's sort of it's different to, but focusing on the sort of stuff we talked about last week, but with a different focus. And this is built. I'm not suggesting this is replacing the Agile Manifesto. It's really building on it. Quick question to you then. So I'm going to sort of like top 10 pop figures. You know, thinking about what the top 10 behaviours, rituals, philosophy should be. So if you could go on to chat, if you'd be so kind, and just give your opinion. You know, what top 10 behaviours, rituals, philosophy do you think should be in place in agile leadership? Yeah, great comment from Frank. Command and control is a great way to trigger fight and flight. That's my experience. Removing fear. The foundation of agile leadership is trust. And again, on a later webinar, we'll probably look about some thinking to do with building trust within teams. Yeah, Frank, another great one. I always say to people, the first thing I do in any organisation is go and give them a damn good listening to. We talk in Radtac about communication cubed, and the first step in communication cubed is listening. Yeah, you're raising really fast, absolutely fantastic stuff. Jasbir speaking up, relates to the principle of courage in Scrum, for example. An open ear, listening. Craig, facilitate equal voices, absolutely essential. Karthik, great listener. Brilliant. Enabling philosophy. That's the philosophy of agile, but the philosophy of commitment and all that sort of good stuff. Success stories from Manoj. Absolutely key. Human beings are very motivated by success. Leveraging the experience of the teams. As Jobs was saying, if we're employing brilliant people, let's enable them to leverage that experience. Same as Drucker was suggesting. Innovation and creativity from Jim. Decentralized decision making from Karthik. Yeah, these are all great. Create psychological safety from Owen. Absolutely brilliant point. And psychological safety is a foundation of effective leadership and agile leadership. Absolutely. Setting ground rules and behavior. Yes, empowerment isn't about just everybody doing whatever the hell they want. Yes, we do need to set those foundations. And I can't remember who made the comment earlier on, but accountability and responsibility is the other side of the coin from that. Yes. Okay, so let's just go through. I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. These are just ideas. I'm thinking sort of like these are the top 10 things that if I was looking at an agile business and looking at the leaders in agile business, these are the top 10 things I'd be looking for. So it comes back to a very early point that one of our friends on the webinar raised right at the beginning. Agile business leaders must have a customer focus. We must recognize that we're not just doing things for the good of doing things. We're doing things to get value out there to customers, the people who will enable our business to move forward. That brings in all sorts of ideas like design thinking, human-centered design. Design thinking thinks about understanding. It thinks about convergent thinking, divergent thinking, convergent, divergent, or should I say the other way around, divergent, convergent, divergent, convergent. So yes, we need to make sure we have a customer focus, and we need to make sure that we're understanding the changing needs of the customers. So an agile business leader would always have a focus on that. Agile business leaders deliver small increments continuously. I focus on fast feedback. So it's what I said right at the beginning of the webinar. Basically, we need to make sure that we work with our business colleagues to break things down into small increments of value that are deliverable. It's only when we deliver those small increments of value, those releasable increments, that we can get feedback. It's only when we get feedback that we can actually start to understand, are we going the right direction or not? Are we gaining credence in the world? And if you look at a lot of the effective, fast evolving businesses and digital disruptors, this is the way they all work. This is certainly the way digital disruptors work. So we bring into play things like continuous integration, continuous deployment. So it's more than just DevOps nowadays. Yeah, haven't got time to go through these in detail, but there's an idea. Agile businesses leaders focus on systems thinking, optimizing flow, and recognizing the cost of delay. Peter Senge is, when you're talking about systems thinking, is the dude. If you want to read a bit about systems thinking high level. So I'll just read out his description here. The fundamental rationale of systems thinking is to understand how it is that the problems we will deal with, which are the most vexing, difficult, and intransigent, come about, and to give us some perspective on those problems in order to give us some leverage and insight as to what we might do differently. Yeah. So that's he's the guy in system. That's a really good definition of systems thinking. Don't look at parts of the system and just try and fix parts of the system. Because if you do, you'll probably fix this part of the system and totally break those parts of the system. Look at the whole value chain, look at the whole system. And I can't remember who, I think it was Assis was talking about, Kanban's about optimizing flow, definitely. We need to optimize the flow of value delivery. That's absolutely true. So yes, as leaders, we should do that. And recognizing the cost of delay. There's numerous ways to define cost of delay, but one way to define it is in the bottom right here. User business value plus time criticality plus risk reduction and opportunity enablement. So that's one way to define cost of delay. Many teams do that. Brilliant. So, Peter Senge, yeah, absolutely. Building trust from Karthik, yeah, absolutely true. And Karthik has also suggested something here, WSJF, weighted shortest job first. Yeah, again, it's another thing we would think about in this arena. So yes, as I say, I'm touching on some big ideas here, but I'm just saying this is what I would look for. Again, somebody mentioned this a bit earlier. Agile business leaders ruthlessly priority. Everything can't be number one. I told this story in the last webinar, but I was working for a large airline about 25, 30 years ago, working in a change context, in a transformation context. And I was chatting to the director who was running, I nearly said the airline's name there, who was running the engineering department, which we were looking at transforming. And I asked him, how many, what were the priorities basically? What were we trying to do? What priority order? And he said, he read out 96 things. And those 96 things were all priority one. Didn't work. No great surprise there. So ruthless prioritization. What we got here, Peter Dowling, Dave Snowden tends to suggest that systems thinking fundamentally does not work in complex systems. Yeah, I've met Dave a few times. I know him, respect his thinking, and I've sort of chatted to him about this. Yeah, we differ in opinion on that one, yeah, Dave's a really good guy to align with. I would suggest have a look at Cynefin, for those of you who haven't heard of Dave Snowden. C-Y-N, I'm going to spell this wrong, C-Y-N, E-F-Y-N, I think. Cynefin, Dave Snowden. So Dave's if you want to start looking at complexity thinking, Dave's really the place to start. Fantastic stuff. Okay, let's keep. Oh, thanks, Zach. I just saw before I went off the comments that you put spelling Cynefin there, brilliant. So agile business leaders place decision making at the right place. So yes, with some things we might centralize. More strategic thinking, maybe we might centralize, perhaps communities of practice, decentralize everything else. Again, aligning into Drucker's thinking, we want to make sure that knowledge workers who are much more likely to make the right decision are the people we get making the decisions. Who should make the decisions about how customers are dealt with, how customers are interacted with? The people who interact with the customers. So it really needs to be the people at the coalface who are interacting with the who are interacting with the customer to do this. Right, just bear with me a second. I'm just shooting myself in the foot on the technology here. Okay, over to the chats again. Cynefin, yeah. Yeah, weighted shortest job first. Yeah, brilliant stuff. Good. Okay, so let's keep pushing forward. Agile business leaders visualize and facilitate. Yeah, certainly true. The art of the possible. So the idea of the art of the possible, very quickly, it's a Scrum thing. It's basically, sometimes teams can become very disenamored and very demotivated, largely because they've been treated like idiots, to be fair, been treated like automatons. So that's the way they act, theory X, theory Y. What we need to do as leaders is change that ethos. So rather than the team saying, no, we can't do that to every idea, this is impossible to every idea, we want to change the ethos of the team that, when an idea is raised, their initial reaction is, that's an interesting idea. We have tried that before and it didn't work, but things are a bit different now. Perhaps if we change these other things over here, that might work. Let's give it a go. So the thought process is try things out, experiment and pivot. But the thing to do is try things out in short periods of time, sprints or iterations. So try things out. If they work, keep doing them. If they don't, stop. Don't prevaricate too much. Visualization, yeah, we're seeing here what's called an information radiator or Kanban board. This has been set up as a Kanban board. You can see the work in progress limits here. Over here, this is what's called a program increment board. So these green Post-it notes down the left there are teams. The big yellow Post-it notes at the top there are sprints. So it's a very, very easy way to visualize what's going on in a pretty large program of work. The reason I've got this picture here is that this is pretty obvious that we've got a fundamental problem with dependencies in this particular program because we've got so many pieces of string. So visualize, everything's visual. Business leaders, agile business leaders respect the time box. So the idea of time boxing is basically we box the time. So, conceptually we have like a glass of water, I suppose. As we fill that glass of water up with things that we need to do. So let's say this is a 2-week sprint. Yeah. So we fill it up with things we want to do. If something comes into the time box, something goes out of the time box. So in the same way, if you had a glass that's full of water, if you pour more water in, water flows out. What flows out is the less important stuff. What flows in is the more important stuff. So time boxing. You'll see time boxing in place and you'll see the leaders respecting the time box. Yeah, long-lasting, stable teams. We want to set what are called velocities in Agile. We can only really do that with long-lasting, stable teams. We want to get all the benefits of team building. We want to get team dynamism. Yeah, we're only going to be able to do that with long-lasting, stable teams. So, yeah, I mean, teams are going to evolve. Some people on the team will change, obviously, over time. Good model to look at here is Tuckman. I'm sure most of you have heard of Tuckman. And then Agile business leaders allow the team breathing space to reduce things like technical debt, build enablers, cross-train, continuously learn, all this sort of stuff. So this is something else that I would look for in recognizing, have we really got an agile business? Are the leaders operating in an agile way? And then the last one of all, top 10, mate, is what are called objective key results. So good book here by John Doerr. Yeah, the very, very high level, the idea of an objective key result is you define an objective, I will X, Y, Z, and then you define the key results that measure that objective. So we were talking a little bit about measurement earlier on in this webinar. I'll talk more about it as we go through further webinars, but this is sort of like a good starting point where organizations are using objective key results and that sort of thing. It's giving me a good feeling because what they're doing is they're measuring the outcomes. They're measuring the outcomes that are being delivered. They're measuring, are we giving value? The three basic measures, the absolute basic measures you would use are we delivering value? Yeah. Are we delivering value fast enough? In other words, is the lead time good? And is the customer satisfied? Are we delivering value? Are we delivering it fast enough? Is the customer satisfied? So those three basic things are in place, supported by things like OKRs, supported by things like Net Promoter Scores, NPS scores. Then we're pretty sure we're going there. We're pretty sure we're going the right direction. OKR, yeah. So Craig, OKR is very useful. Better than key performance indicators, KPIs. Yeah, I'd agree with you there, Craig. I've tried both. Yeah, I think OKRs are the very. So, just to remind ourselves, what I've done there is just given a very quick overview of what I currently think the top 10 is. As I start to form a community of practice a little bit later on after a few more webinars, I'll be really interested in other people's ideas. These are sort of my ideas. I might be wrong. Who knows? I'm just basing it on my experience. I might be wrong. Yeah, I said we'd touch on high performing teams. 5 critical factors for high performing teams. These are they. Not planning to read out what's on the slide per se. Yeah, we'll talk more about high performing teams obviously as we go through later webinars. And then this, again, it's not something I'm planning to go through per se on the webinar. This is you will get this when I send out the recording of the webinar. Obviously, this is what I've defined as basically based on those top 10. These are the sorts of things that I would be looking. Well, I do look at to assess a business. Has it really got agile leadership in place? So our primary focus is organising to satisfy our customers' value chains. Strongly agree, disagree, neutral. We can get a good idea of where the business is. So there's the first sheet, and there's the second sheet. And then typically when I'm interacting with clients or whoever, I'd be thinking about what's the top area to improve. And then no great surprise, I'm going to create a backlog. I'm going to order that backlog, and then we're going to think about what are we going to do pushing into the future. So we're 15 seconds away from the end. Yeah, we've just looked at we've just looked at what is agile leadership. The next webinar on the 12th is about forms of power and influence, traditional bases of power, that sort of good stuff. As I say, you'll have this recording. So I'll just go back to these again, so it's on the recording. But for now, it's dead on 1:30. I'd just like to say once again, hey, look, absolutely fantastic that all of you came along. Loving the comments you've been giving. There's been some great comments on chat. Keep safe. Keep safe. I hope you've enjoyed today, and I'll just stay on the I'll stay on the webinar just to say to people. But thanks once again. See you next time. Cheers. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Some very, very nice comments. Very nice comments. Oh, it's next Wednesday, the 13th of May. In that case, the 13th of May. Sorry, yes. Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Guy. Thanks, Clive, Jasmine, Karthik, Assis. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, really enjoyed the topic. Yeah, so did I. I find this topic very compelling and very interesting. So brilliant stuff. Great. Best webinar online meet so far. Oh, that's very kind of you. That's very kind of you, Justin. Maria, unfortunately, I missed your last talk. Is it possible to get the link? Yes, I've sent out a 5-minute recording already, but I'm going to send out the full recording of the last webinar I did in the next week or so. So yes, Maria, you'll definitely get that. Amani, yes, more on this stuff, please. Well, there's 3 more webinars specifically in this area coming up over the next 3 Wednesdays. Productive evening. Oh, it's obviously evening where you are, Karthik. Brilliant. Great session, Matty. Thanks very much. That's very kind. Okay, folks. I'll say goodbye. As I say, absolute pleasure and honour to talk to you once again. And hopefully see you next Wednesday. Or if you want to contact me, obviously you've got my email ID down there, etc. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to end the meeting. Great to meet you all.